guys, it's just me on my own today, and I'm here to talk to you a little bit about my story, my life story, and I am thrilled to be here. It's a little weird just talking to you, but nonetheless, here we are together, and I really wanted to take some time to share my own story and how my purpose, even my plans, and all that I thought was going to happen was the complete opposite. And how, as I grew and as I am continuing to grow, shedding some of the things that I thought were supposed to happen in this happily ever after that I thought as a little girl really became the cornerstone for me of my change. And how this idea of this man on this white horse, this Prince Charming coming and saving me having all of these kids, me like having all these different ideas of what I thought life was going to be like, have really changed so much. And I am so glad that they've changed, because it really made way for new opportunities and for me to see things very differently. And so as I begin, I just wanted to share a little bit just about this idea of what I thought when I was a kid. So when I was younger, I had this idea that, like most of us growing up with Disney stories as the background to our life, that I thought that I really was going to meet Prince Charming, which I did meet my Prince Charming, but that it was going to be easy, and there was going to be this sense of ease with it, that we would easily be able to get pregnant and have children and or adopt, which is what I had wanted to do since I was very, very little, and that there would be really little to no complication. And I kind of call this my magazine life. And I've shared this with my my counselor. I've shared this with my life coach. But I really had this idea that I ascribed to this life that looked like a magazine cover. And my whole entire life, I thought that was real. And as I got older and I let go of a lot of those expectations of myself, I realized that magazine life is boring, one, and it also sets me up for a lot of failure. And so as I grew throughout my life, I really learned that having these expectations does also create this ideal that is unattainable. And so as I begin just my story with that as kind of the preface, everything else since then has been this shedding of this idea. And the biggest one, I think, was my idea as a mom. And so when I was younger, the only thing I ever wanted to do is I wanted to be a mom. That was the one thing that I knew I wanted to be. And that was, to me, the most important role that I would play out in my life. And before I got married, before Roger and I even started to talk about kids, I knew that desire to adopt was planted within my heart long before he had even come into the picture. My thought of even marrying somebody had come into picture. And in the later part of this episode, or this part, we'll get into that a little bit of just what that conversation looked like, and then how that played out. And so for me, adoption was never this plan B, like not an if we can't. It was a first and then for us. So adoption became the first, and then having birth children was the second for me personally. Roger shared a little bit different, and he'll share that later. But for me, it was that I just had this idea that I was going to adopt, and then we would get pregnant. It'd be so easy. And a lot of people even told me that. They said, oh, as soon as you adopt, you're going to get pregnant. And there was almost this infatuation that people had to assure me that I was going to get pregnant. And that began this kind of spiral for me in really feeling inadequate as a mom. And that became kind of my story for a really, really long time, that as a foster parent or as an adoptive mom, that I really was just that. I was just the caretaker. And I began to really struggle with that idea because I never felt like I was the only. It became, it's me and. And so that really settled into my heart. And I really had to grapple with that. I had to go to counseling for that. I had to talk to other adopted parents. And I also, the biggest thing is I had to have a different mindset of myself. I had to start telling myself something different, that my value and my worth was not in having birth children, but it was in the mom that I was being to my current children, no matter what children that was placed in my home. And so that for me was a game changer. I was able to really lean into that truth. And obviously my faith is one of the big things that got me through that time. So again, Roger and I will talk a little bit more in depth about our infertility journey, but we were pursuing our adoptions and foster parents while we were doing infertility treatment. And I became very convicted within my heart that the infertility treatment was causing a lot of pain for both of us. He had 2 surgeries. I was getting injections, and it just didn't feel right. It didn't feel natural. It never felt like it fit. And for me, my mind-body connection is so intense that I really, for me personally, felt so disconnected from my body. And so that also gave way to what I'm going to share next was just a season of depression. And so dealing with the depression of not being able to have birth children, and then the pressures of society and the questions of why are you adopting, or why are you bringing kids into your home when you should be focused on the goal, right? But what again drew me out of the depression is that my goal? And really not making my goals about what somebody else's goals are for me. And so that was a really big turning point for me. A turning point also in my motherhood, in my owning of my motherhood. And about that time is when Alexis came into the picture. And again, later on, we're going to share in depth what our adoption journey was with each of the kids, and even our parenting journey with our parenting and our marriage journey with adoption. But around that time, we received a call about Alexis, and we obviously took that call and took action and adopted her and brought her into our home. I really started to see my mind shifting in a different way. And specifically, I think because she was a girl. And so the responsibility and the weight of what is this going to look like as a mom to a girl, and really being that difference that she will see as she grows into a woman. What am I going, in what ways is she going to look at me and see this mom and see how to be a mom in the future? And then that also led me to what kind of wife that my boys are going to desire. And so that really began my journey into yoga, and really delving a little bit deeper. And I haven't shared exactly what brought me into yoga, but that wasn't even the thing that brought me into yoga. I got hurt, and I had an ACL and a meniscus tear and a surgery, and that's really what brought me to yoga. But what I didn't know is that what yoga would do for me was to really heal me from the inside out. And about that time that I became a yoga instructor and started going to yoga regularly and really leaning into my practice was about the time that Alexis was about 3 years old. And I really noticed a shift in my mindset of what my motherhood story was, and really owning that motherhood story. And that came with yoga. It came with those silent moments of sitting in Shavasana. it came in those moments of breathing in all that was going on and the experiences, and even going back and in therapy and talking about some of the things that I struggled through as a kid, struggled through as a young adult, and really felt that there was this healing modality that yoga provided for that, because it gave way, it gave space for me to stop, to think, to ponder, to journal. And those things were what led me to really connect more deeply with myself and to understand that I am enough, that I am worthy, that I am a mom, that I am all of these different things that I grew into, particularly because I was able to take a step back and I was able to listen. So I hope that that kind of gave you a little touch as to what we'll be talking about in this next part, as I invite Roger to come along. Welcome to the second part of this introduction to our story. And I have a very special guest, one of my favorite people in the whole wide world, my best friend, my soulmate, my ride or die,
Rachel.
no, not Rachel, my confidant,
Sadie.
no, not Sadie.
That's
My
our dog.
husband.
Yay.
Yay.
Hi.
Welcome. And I invited him on because this is not just my story, but this is our story. And so a little bit about yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself real quick.
I'm Christine's confidant, soulmate, best friend. I'm Roger. I'm a 53-year-old choir teacher at Upland High School. Been teaching choir for 25 years. I like long walks on the beach.
Oh my gosh.
Anything chocolate, and movies.
In case anybody wants to send you anything.
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, I like chocolate when I don't have it. When I
All
get
right.
too much chocolate, don't like it.
Yeah.
Not a fan. Been married to my bride for 25 years.
Yep. Just celebrated it.
Yep.
We
Well,
made it. Almost didn't.
Well, made it sounds like we're at the end. So,
No, you made it though.
Yeah, we're
Yeah, that's
working.
pretty good. We're working at
living,
it.
journeying.
Yeah, trekking away.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I kind of get a little introduction into what adoption looked like for me, what motherhood looked like for me. Can you tell us a little bit about what fatherhood has been for you?
You're definitely not ready for it, especially when your first intro to it is a vivacious, screaming 4-year-old who calls you Mr. Roger. So, it is. It's a journey. You kind of go with it. It's like, okay, whatever comes at us, and boy, he came at us.
Yeah.
So we kind of didn't get a chance to have those infant times because he came at us at 4.5, and which is fine. It's exactly
Do you
how it
remember what we did the first weekend when we found out that I think we
You're
signed
asking
up.
me if
No,
I
no,
remember?
no. I know, but here, okay, fine. I'll jar your memory.
Okay, there you go.
So, I was just graduated college. I think I was like 1 week after I graduated college, and I don't know what we were doing, signing up to be foster parents. I guess that was kind of just like something that we had talked about, obviously, that we wanted to do. It's so long ago.
Mm-hmm.
We were just talking about how long ago it feels. And we went away for a weekend. A friend of ours gave us a little getaway, and we brought I think we brought 7 to 10 parenting books with us.
Did we read any of them? I don't
We
think we read
did.
any.
We did. We went through some of them, and then we were like, "All right, I think we're ready. I think this is good." And then we got Christopher, and it basically threw all the books away.
All of that went out the window. Because none of them were how to parent a 4.5-year-old with trauma.
Right. And we were like, trauma? What is that?
We'll just parent him fine. He'll be fine.
We'll
parent it out of him.
Exactly. No.
Didn't happen.
No. But even as you've grown into fatherhood, I think you've settled nicely into fatherhood. I'm sure you haven't like me, just, there's lots of things we could do different. We're working on ourselves, and while we're simultaneously parenting. But what has been your favorite part about being a father?
Probably Father's Day.
Aw.
Like seeing the one day that I get for me, and then having it seen from the kids' eyes.
Yeah.
And then now that we have a daughter, I mean that's a game changer. The boys are always fun. You wrestle and play and do boy things, and then when you have a daughter, it's like not even completely different
Yeah.
set of things, good and bad.
Yeah.
You know, and now we're going through the twilight zone of the teenage years in one more week.
Yeah,
so.
in one more week we will no longer have small children anymore. Nope. We will have all teenagers and adults, which
she
is
hasn't been a
very
small children for a while.
Yeah,
she was like 6 going on 20.
Yeah, she has an old soul.
Mm-hmm.
So I had kind of shared a little bit about what it felt like when we first decided that we wanted to adopt. And I think for me, it was something obvious that we talked about before we even got married, and something even in our dating life that I was like, this for me is not like an option. Like this is a desire of my heart. And I know it wasn't really of yours, but when did you start to begin to kind of not buy in, but kind of own this as something that you desired as well?
Yeah, it wasn't even on my radar. I had no interest. For me, adoption was like, that's what you do when you can't have kids, and that's your last resort if you can't have kids naturally. But we went to a workshop over the weekend. It was at a Calvary Chapel down in Capo Beach, and it was put on by Family Life. And it was, I don't remember what.
I remember I signed us up for that.
Right. Yeah. Like she does with everything else.
Hey, you've gotten some pretty cool things out of me signing you up for stuff.
Yeah. You know, CrossFit and yoga, backyard yoga.
Wheel of Fortune.
Yeah.
Come on.
So,
Give me some credit.
All right. And I don't remember what the workshop was called, but it was definitely about adoption, and not like it was a second class kind of thing, that because we struggled with infertility, and so that became pretty apparent that we probably need to look at some different some alternative ways of how we were going to grow our family. We couldn't afford IVF because that was, I was making $6 an hour as a teacher. And you were making $8 an hour in Whittier. So we just kind of looked at some different options, and this workshop just really opened my eyes to, ultimately God's desire for adoption, and just all throughout the Bible you see how God adopts us into His family, and it just kind of blew me away. I'm like, oh my gosh, because I'd heard about adoption, but I never looked at it from God's point of how He sees adoption and how we're adopted into His family, and how, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, I get it. Mm-hmm. And it was just, and that was it. That was a game changer completely. Because then all of a sudden it wasn't about me. It wasn't about, well, we can't have kids, so I guess we have. It's like, no, this is God's heart for us, and taking care of widows and orphans, and not that we went around looking for orphans and widows, but just the principle of that.
We had gone on a trip to
to
Romania,
right.
and that was also another game changer for us. I think it was just that we had kind of decided, like, maybe we should foster and see what part we could play in the bigger picture. How do you feel like the infertility, like that process was, and the struggles through the infertility? How did you experience that? How was that for you?
The reality is, as a man, you're kind of like, wow, there's that, that's the natural cycle, is that you should be able to get pregnant. And And I think we probably were just having
Naive.
fun. No,
Oh yeah, we
no, I
were
think we
having
were just
fun.
having fun because it wasn't until 7 years into the marriage, and
We were like,
and
wait,
then we're like,
what?
wait, I'm 35 and you're 29, and we're not getting pregnant, and we didn't. I mean, because I don't think either one of us wanted kids right away.
No.
We were just, it was
We
a
were I
blast.
was really young when I got married. I was
Yeah, but lots of
21.
people are young and they have
No, but
kids at
I
20
knew
something.
that we'd spent a lot of time traveling. Like I knew that was kind of the route that I wanted to go. I knew I didn't want to have kids right away. I wanted to be a little bit
And I wasn't
older.
thinking about it.
Yeah, Roger was just kind of going along
I was
life
just,
like
I'm
do
like,
do 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 do.
this is fun. We're like, wow, should have gotten married a long time ago. But, and so, 7 years into it, we're like, okay, our friends are getting pregnant. A lot of our friends at church are getting pregnant. I got tested, and then I ended up having 2 surgeries, and still didn't fix the problem. And so at that point, I think,
And I kind of talked about a little bit about how like you had done that. I was doing the injections, and
oh,
there was
that's
a
right,
part
yeah.
where it was like it just didn't feel right. And we had just gotten Matthew, and it was kind of just this thing where it was like it just like my body wasn't feeling right. It just wasn't
But we were
something wasn't.
hoping.
We were
I
hoping,
mean,
of
if it were,
course.
we would have been
We've been
excited if it
hoping
happened.
since like I mean, up to
7 years into the marriage.
yeah, no, up to a year ago, we like thought we were pregnant, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is not happening right now.
No,
God, why
that's
would
a
you allow
whole
like
that's a whole nother counseling session that would have to happen.
I know you could be here forever talking about all this stuff, but I think primarily for anybody who out there who's listening, there are a lot of people who struggle with infertility, and especially it's becoming more and more prevalent in our society that is a struggle for most people. But if you could say anything to another guy, like guy to guy, about infertility, what would you share with them?
It doesn't define you. I mean, it's just, it's a reality. It's a reality of our society. It's a reality of the human body, and you pursue all the possibilities through medical advancements and things like that. And if you're fortunate enough to look at IVF and other artificial insemination, there's lots of possibilities. You just have to decide as a couple what you're willing to go through.
And I think that's probably where we decided, where it's like we got to like draw the line somewhere. We've been given permission by our children. I made sure that as we were telling our story, that this is not just my story, my motherhood story, or Roger's fatherhood story, or their story. This really is our story collectively, and wanted to make sure that each of our kids also had our permission to share this. So we're going to get a little tiny bit into each of the kids' stories quickly, and Roger's going to share Christopher's first. So, and you told a little bit about how Christopher came to us at 4, and maybe we can share quickly a little bit more about his story.
Yeah, he was in the foster system. He was forcibly removed from his birth mom's place. Lots of just abuse, drugs, homelessness, just neglect. I mean, you name it. The kid was he lived through it. So he was removed from that and was in a couple of group homes. I think there was one in Orange County, 2 of them in Orange County, and that's where we first met him.
And he was 4.
Yeah, he was 4.
He was 3.5 when he entered in a
home.
group home.
Yeah, and you just kind of think about just what that's like at 3.5, sharing a room with someone, bunch of other kids kind of hanging out, and
even the experience of seeing a lot of kids come and go. That was one of the experiences that just recently came up, is seeing kids coming and going and never seeing them again, which is hard for a kid who has abandonment issues.
Right. As you take them in, and it's you spend a day with him at first, and then you go and you do it again, and then and again and again, and then at some point they decide that maybe he can spend the weekend, and then you do like a sleepover. So it's a slow introduction to see if it is a good fit. 3 years of back and forth, because the reality of the foster system is the courts, at least from their opinion, say that reunification with the birth parent is the goal. Not necessarily if that's what's best for the kid, but that's the goal. And so the birth mom has an attorney and the things that they have to try to do, and so it's kind of just this. It's a drag out fight for what we provide for the kid, where that how does that play into it, what the birth mom does when Christopher's at home with her, and then just this back and forth, and it's gut wrenching.
Yeah.
At some point, he began to spend, we would do daily visits with her, and just go meet at McDonald's for 3 or 4 hours, let Christopher hang out there, and then it was becoming more and more apparent that she was really working at trying to get him back, and so that's where the fight just kind of started to begin.
Because of what we saw when he would come home.
Right. So we would see patterns and things like that. And she made a couple of really poor choices that fortunately for us tipped the courts in our favor. And it was like at the 11th hour. Because at that point he was going back 5 days a week. So you can imagine we had him for 3 years, and it went from just seeing her like every once a week for a few hours at McDonald's to now he leaves our house on Thursday and we don't see him till Tuesday of the following week.
Right.
And we're like, that's it. He's gone.
And he was coming home with major behavior issues, which is normal, I think, for any kid. But he was also having night terrors, and there were some really big things that were happening at that point in time.
But she just made some really poor choices that at that point, even though he was going back 5 days a week, once she made those decisions, the court said, okay, wrong choice.
Yeah.
And then cut ties. And after that, we're like, holy moly.
Put your seatbelt on.
He's ours.
Well, yeah, but then it was like, put your seatbelt on, because this, I would say probably after that, it was pretty rough. We had some really rough years there. And I would say Christopher was probably, because of the age he was at and the trauma he experienced, probably required a lot of our attention and our time and our a lot of crying, a lot of learning for sure. So okay, and so then I'm going to share just a little bit. Then Christopher was adopted we didn't officially adopt Christopher, so he was 7 years old, and then Christopher is now 23 and 22. He'll be 23 in a month, 2 months. Yeah. But he's been through a lot. He's been through a lot of pain, and also a lot of growth and a lot of healing too, I would say, in this last couple of years. So, and then our second one was Matthew, and Matthew was he was actually removed at birth. He was addicted to meth, and had to be weaned off of meth, and was placed in a foster home that specifically works with drug babies. And if I ever see, I probably maybe not see that person ever again, that foster mom this side of heaven, but she is like an angel, because her goal was specifically to take in foster babies that are drug exposed, to take care of them. She knew exactly the different ways to do that. And I felt like was set up right from the beginning, straight out of the gate, just way prepared for life. And what he did experience, though, was a lot of what the drug exposure, the kind of the remnants of the drug exposure, which was a lot of sensory issues. So specifically related to the way that he would act out with his body, and things like that.
And eating.
Yeah.
A lot of texture issues.
Yeah.
Funny story, huh?
Not really.
For about 2 years, Matthew would only eat for a while.
Oh, no. I thought you meant
Matthew would only eat chicken nuggets.
Yeah.
That's all he would eat.
And applesauce.
But we didn't know about these reflexes that we know now. And so every time Matthew would eat applesauce, he would
No,
gag.
not applesauce. Anything. It was before. It was when he first started eating solid food. So I would feed him baby food, and he would, or
baby
other
food.
like food that was like a little bit more textured, and he would
gag.
And I was like, "What is going on?
We're like, oh, look,
why
it's
is
so
he
cute.
doing it?" I didn't think it was
Here,
cute.
have some more.
I was just like, "What's going
And then
on?"
you find out
and then
his body is saying no, and you're like,
the
oh my
OT
gosh,
was like, "Oh
we
yeah."
failed.
He has
Because a gag reflex.
No, because typically kids who are exposed at birth, some of them will have esophagus issues because their esophagus was not able to form like a natural way because of the drug exposure. It does all sorts of things. So your body does all sorts of things.
So being the awesome parents
we were not prepared again, as well as we should have been.
We're just sitting there going, "Oh, look, it's so cute." He's like, "Oh." No.
I didn't think it was cute. You thought it was cute. I thought I was like, what's going on? What is wrong? Like something's wrong. But at first it was kind of like funny. Like Christopher thought it was funny. And then I was like, I don't think this is normal. Right. And then it was like, oh yeah, that's not normal. But then the OT told us, and I was like, it would have been really nice if somebody would have told us this, that this is going to happen. So this is kind of
that's part of the journey.
I know. Well, this is, I think, for foster parents who are listening or adoptive parents who are listening, you might get a kid that's like, you have no clue what is going on. And, maybe like, it's just really good to be very vigilant and very like aware of like what's going on and around you and what's typical and what's not and things like that. Yeah. And have a support system. So Matthew really struggled throughout his life with a lot of his own physical things. And so we learned a lot through that, a lot of just really great things to help him. He had an OT specialist and all that. So his birth family situation was interesting. It was a single mom. And she had had children before that. And so that was another struggle. She was doing what she was supposed to be doing. She was, but I could tell that when he would come back, because he was so little, he couldn't really talk. There was something not right. He was distressed when he would come home. Mm-hmm. And he was in a space that he needed to be contained and held, and there was a lot of crying. There was a lot of, and he was very little. I mean, he was like a year and a half. He was like, he couldn't even talk really. And he was coming home with rashes and things like that. And so we knew that there was something going on. And so through just a series of time, it really is just time. It takes
time and being
very vigilant,
diligent about documenting everything. It's just, he was coming on.
I hated it.
Rashes and things like that. So we literally started taking pictures of the rashes and documenting that it coincided with him coming back from her house. Every time he would spend a weekend, he would have just awful bouts of diarrhea for a couple of days. So clearly something was either she wasn't aware of what he was eating and what it was doing to him, but it was pretty consistent. And again, Matthew's journey was very similar in that he was going over there for several days at a time. And so you're like, okay, are we going to lose this kid? And, because again, that is the goal. That's the risk.
That's the risk, but that is the goal, that ultimately if they're in a home that is providing and they're open and there's dialogue.
I mean, we were never open. We were never closed-minded to the fact that, if that was what was reunified with his birth mom was best for Matthew, then we
both of them.
We just kind of said if that happens, then we just need to come from the standpoint of we loved these kids as best as we could, and we gave them a home in which they were going to know that they were loved. And if at the end of the day God said, hey, these kids need to go back to their birth families, then we trusted that. And as painful as that would be, we just kind of resigned ourselves to say that if we, if we're in their lives for this certain amount of time to love on them, well, that's what the foster system is. But fortunately, it didn't happen.
It didn't happen, right? So that was Matthew. Matthew's now 18 years old. He is in college, and we did a lot of kind of trial and error with him and just figuring out what was best for his body and what helped him to feel kind of contained, which is what he needed. As he dealt with some of the physical ailments, he dealt with that pretty much most of his life. And so for him, swimming became a thing that helped to relieve or give him a threshold for his body to be able to cope. So, and then Alexis, completely the opposite of everything that we just told you.
No, that was a miracle in itself. She was a private adoption, and it literally just. Well, you tell the story.
So really quick, it was like, I don't know how old the boys were. They were like 10 and 5 or something like that. They came to us on New Year's and they had said, hey, we've been praying for a sister. And we were like, oh, that's funny. We're done. Like, we're good. Like, we got 2 boys. We had just been through the ringer with just the foster system, and I just really was good. Like, and we had kind of thought about maybe we should look a little bit further into infertility, and I don't know, like maybe we should, maybe not. We were not really settled on anything, but obviously God had a very different plan. And I had gotten a email from somebody saying that there was a little girl. She was 2.5 months old. She's in Goleta. Her birth mother is 19 years old. She's in danger of losing her to the system. There's obviously some neglect going on and some calls that had been made on the birth mom. And she's looking to give her child up for adoption. She just feels like she's too young and it's just too much. So I was reading this and I'm like, hey, there's this little girl in Goleta. Like, should I inquire about it? And he's watching TV, totally like dazed out. He's like,
she's asking me this life-changing question.
And he's like, yeah, sure. So I was like, all right. So I start this dialogue with this attorney, and along the way, he's like, well, do you guys have the money for it? And I was like, yeah. And I was like, I have no idea if we have the money for it. We probably don't, but we didn't. And, so, but I figured money's easy to find, right? You can always find money. That's an easy part. We had a house. I'm like, we could always take money out of the house, whatever. We had some resources that we could pull from if we absolutely needed to. So, and I was kind of like already like, this is not going to happen anyways. This is so funny. Like, it's just funny that the boys had come to me and literally a week later we got this email. Yeah. So then the attorney calls and I'm like, oh, this is real now. Like, he's calling me. And then, he said, hey, well, do you want to come down and meet her? And at that point I was like, okay, they're asking these questions. Like, do we want to go down and meet? And then we started talking to the boys about it and stuff. And they're obviously really excited. And they were kind of like, whoa, we just like told you this. And like, all of a sudden it's happening. Like, they were kind of tripping out too. So
he's like, we want a dog.
Yeah, I know. So like, yeah, I was like, why couldn't you ask for like a dog? Like, why does it have to be a kid? Right. With Alexis, we were blessed because the attorney,
it was just like everything lined up.
It lined up, and the attorney was like, look, I'm not trying to make a lot of money off this.
No, he's like, not. He wasn't making anything.
He wasn't making anything.
We didn't have to. There were no attorney fees. There were no.
He charges $500, which is like unheard of.
Right.
So it was basically like every single thing that could have happened lined up. We go down. We see Alexis. I'll never forget. She was crying. I picked her up. She looked right at me. We had this like moment. She stopped crying. And I remember her birth mom was like, oh my gosh. Like, she was taken back. She also herself was adopted from Peru. And so
she heard our story.
She heard our story.
With the boys, and
we were a mixed family. That meant a lot to her, that she grew up with people who looked like her. That was very important to her. And we literally, from that minute, we met her. A week later, we went back down to Goleta, or up to Goleta.
Well, no, you're skipping a part. So we were 1 out of 4 families that day.
Oh, that's right.
That they were interviewing. So we were number 2, I think, number 2 or 3, and we told her our story. We told our story to the boys. We told her what our family's about. So after we met them, talked to them, interviewed, they said, okay, we'll let you know. And then so they went out And then literally like 10 minutes later, the attorney comes back and he says they don't want to meet with any of the other families. They want to know if you would like to take Alexis. They want you guys. And we're like, wait, I thought we were just coming up here to meet her.
I know. It was
And
crazy.
and I remember the walk back to the car. We're like,
Yeah.
we don't have anything.
We had nothing.
We were like, we this was just supposed to be a family trip to come and see.
In fact, we had like just gotten rid. I remember it was our first trip to Disneyland without a stroller. It was like, we have arrived. We only have a backpack.
Right.
Like, this is the greatest thing ever.
And
I mean, we literally started all over again. It was
but
a
just
trip.
I mean, for me, the whole process of when you do a private adoption, you sign the papers, and it's done.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there was like a 30-day
No, it was
waiting period where the mom could change her mind.
no, it was 24 hours.
Oh, well, it was close.
24 hours. 30 days, 24
It was like a
hours.
24-hour period where she could decide if she changed her
Yeah.
mind. But after that, it was done. And I was asking the attorney, I say, so when do we do visits? Like, when do we do...
We were so conditioned
we're
to
like,
do that.
I go, how do we figure out when this is done? He goes, what are you talking about?
It literally,
He's
like, you're going to come down next week and
"It's
pick her up and take her.
done,
It's
and
done.
It's done, and she's
Like,
yours.
wait.
And she's official. I go, what? So that was weird. Nice, but weird.
Yeah, it was. I would say that was the first time I felt the easefulness of being a parent.
Yeah.
It was very like,
Well, you don't have any of the uncertainty.
there's no uncertainty.
There was no chance she was going anywhere.
yeah, and
That
it was
was
just like, wow, like it was the first time I think we had experienced that ease. So that was really cool. So that's their stories. And then I just want to touch just a little bit on because it's just real and raw and rawness of just us sharing and being authentic about like what maybe some of the experiences have been even within our marriage. Like I would say we have a pretty obviously have a lot of like stuff that we've dealt with throughout the years, but what would you say to somebody who is adopting or even becoming a parent? Let's just say like not even just becoming a parent, and what maybe we could share a little bit about what to be mindful about.
Like-minded in how you're going to parent.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you have different ideas, just if you can figure out how you're going to be a team, because it has to be a team. We've gotten into arguments about what I think should be done, what she thinks to be done, and sometimes they're different, but you have to figure out, it's just like, it's like a marriage. Two different people coming in and say, all right, work together, love each other. And it's, it's even harder when you parent.
Yeah.
Because now you got this little body in front of you, and they have their own will, and you're supposed to go, okay, I wasn't prepared for that. And how are we going to be a team in how we want to deal with things? Because I don't think we talked about that.
No.
I don't think we said, okay, you do that when you're in the midst of chaos.
Yeah.
And
But I do think that it will kind of organically happen. We do work really well as a team. There are some times where we're like, wait, that's what you think should happen? Or, but we've learned to, I think, yeah, would you say?
Yeah.
Like,
No, you have to.
Yeah. I think
if
you
you're
just
gonna
like
if you're gonna do
organically.
stuff well, you have to at least be open to what works and what doesn't work, and
I would say
that you don't have all the answers.
Yeah, that we don't have all the answers. I would say also that having good arguments in front of kids is okay as long as it always is followed up with a resolve, and that your kids know that it's okay to have like an argument or a little discourse between the two of you, but then to come back and honor that person or say sorry or to reconcile. Because I think that's one thing that we've done well. And I think it was probably from having parents that didn't do that maybe. And I think that we have created like this authenticity with our kids and authenticity in relationship. That relationship is not always about just getting along all the time, but there are times where you're going to not agree. And there's times where there might be some dissension, but to say, okay, like I understand what you're saying, or, you're really good at this, and really honoring the other person or saying sorry.
Or I'm done. Here, you take them.
Right. Yeah. Like the handoff thing is always
Yep.
great. Oh my
They're
gosh.
like,
Especially
okay,
that's been a game changer for us, especially the last couple of years.
with the daughter.
Well, the daughter, but also like I realize that I don't really parent teenagers very well. Like you are really, really good with that. And probably because you're a high school teacher and you've had many years of that experience with teenagers. But there were a lot of times where Roger had to like step in and say, all right, I'm going to take this. And there's times where I've had to step in and do the same thing. So that's part of that team and that kind of like handing off the baton to the next person. So there was one more thing that I was going to say. I think the other thing I would say that we have done well is to take time to go away together. Without the kids. We used to do it only once a year, and then we've recently in the last like 5 years, because our kids are a little older, started going away 2 times a year. It is and not just for a weekend. Like if you can get away for a week, it is a really good time to just kind of reconnect and also to like reset yourself and prepare to come back. And usually I always recommend that to people who have kids, is make sure you take time for yourself
Just
and
get away from
each
that.
other. Yeah. And then we haven't been as consistent lately, but just because of the busyness of our schedules, but we really have been trying to regularly at least go on dates
Once a year.
and then not once a year, go on dates and then
Twice a
also walk together. We've been walking in the morning for the last year. We used to run and then went to walking.
Yeah.
And for us, it was a great time for us just to start our day like that, to connect with one another. And then also, there was a time where we spent time praying for our kids. There was times where we just like, maybe we got into it and we need to resolve things. And sometimes those are more silent walks and then resolve comes. But I think that those are really important things to remember.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Roger's ADD is setting in, so he's about done.
No,
Or nap time. Oh, you're good? Okay.
No, nap time sounds good. But yeah, that's important.
So is there
Really important
anything
to do
else,
those
any last little bits of advice that you would give to anybody?
Be bold, be brave. It's life-changing for both. For the kids that you bring into your house. Just imagine the stability that these little lives need.
Mm-hmm.
And you get to be a game changer for them, albeit brief, or if it ends up being a permanent thing, that will make a difference in their lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Either with you or for the time that they were with you, the memories that will be in there, the memories that those kids will have
Mm-hmm.
of like, I remember being in their house and this is what it was, and that's a game changer.
Yeah.
So it's a journey. It's not easy. It's not for the faint of heart. So don't go into it blindly thinking that it's like Disneyland, because it is definitely not.
Yeah.
It's more like Knott's Scary Farm. So
Not Scary Farm with a little bit of like
with some fairy dust
little fairy dust from Disneyland in
covered
there.
in blood. But it's
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have it any other way.
Nope.
If the story was different and one of them went back, and I would say, hey, we loved them as much as we could, and we got to be that rock for them for the time that they were in our house.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, and then you just go on.
And I would say that bold piece that you said, I love that, because it is, be bold and be proud of your story, whatever it is. Whether that's your story of that you've brought a child into the home and you have had to deal with the loss of them, whether that's you have a child in your home that is maybe experiencing some suffering right now, reach out to people. I think that's part of that bold, but also like be proud of your story, your adoption story. I think for a long time it was really hard for me to like talk to people about that. And I don't really go out and tell people that we've adopted kids, because usually you get some interesting responses. But when I have had the opportunity to share it, I'm bold about it. And I just like talk it up. Like it's, to me, it's like the best thing we could have ever done. I don't think I would have chosen that for myself. Like I talked about in the intro to this, it's like I had this like fairy tale magazine life kind of curated in my mind, and this was not in that curation at all. And it was like, but I wouldn't have it any other way, and I wouldn't have chosen it, but I would not unchoose it either. And so
Right.
I think be bold, also be authentic, be authentically yourself in your own things that you are struggling with, in your own journey to healing your own heart and your own life. That is one of the things I think that we've also done so well, is we're really real with our kids, and they know some things that we've struggled with. You know, they know like the childhood things that we've both experienced. And so I think be authentic, don't be afraid that they're going to, you know, think any differently of you, but just be boldly authentic.
I would also add, find support.
Mm-hmm.
Find other people if you can. If you can find a network of other people who are in the same position. Might be at a church, might be at an adoption agency you use, might be the foster system. That
Support
if you can find other people, not people who aren't adopting, like specifically people who are in your world, because there's things that are unique to adoptive parents. There's things that are unique to couples struggling with infertility who all hate going to baby showers after a while, and
Commiserating is always good.
you know, and stuff like that. So and you need that, because those are real raw feelings, and it's nice to know that there are other people that are going through the same thing you are,
And they need to be validated
Right.
because they're real.
and you can kind of support each other through it, you know.
So if there's anybody out there that is needing like just some support or anything, we are always available. So you can reach out to me at our on our Instagram account at Purpose Culture. And yeah, thank you so much. I love you so much.
Thank you.
And I
love you too.
wouldn't do this with anybody else.
I hope not. Cool.
All right.
Thanks for having me.